Welcome to The Independent Artist, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists, NAIA. I'm Douglas Sigworth. I'm a glassblower.
I'm Will Armstrong, mixed media artist. Join us as we explore the topics that affect the lives and livelihood of art show artists. Hey, Douglas, it's Art by Ty Day here on The Independent Artist. We've got Ty coming in here. I'm excited for you to hear our talk. It basically sounds more like two guys sitting at the corner of the bar than it does necessarily an interview, but I think you'll get a kick out of it.
It's great. I know of Ty because he's been down from me, him and his wife and family at the Uptown show for probably the last 15 years of me doing it. And I walk by and I see his family sitting there and I think, oh man, I remember those days having my kids behind the booth. And here we are talking about families this week.
Yeah, we were talking about families and I thought no better person to talk to than him. I feel like he's the consummate family man. It's been pretty great talking about the podcast and getting the responses from people. I think it's really funny. However, I've noticed something like you were like right out of the gate telling me all of the different responses that you'd gotten from friends and show directors and fellow artists. And I'm like, well, I haven't heard anything from any of my friends about it. Like, what? Maybe I'm, dropping a big deuce. I don't know what's happening. And I'm like, how come none of my friends are reaching out? I'm like, I hope they like it, or I hope I'm not embarrassing myself. Like, well, give it 2 or 3 weeks. Then all of a sudden, my friends start to chime in and be like, "Hey, I finally caught up on this podcast." And it's like I'm starting to realize that the different yin and yang that we have kind of goes all the way down to who our friends are and who we have and who we hang around.
Well, anyone who knows me, if you even mention an idea my way, it's already like the fire's lit and I start working on it that second, Right. You told me you do the paint stroke and you let the canvas sit there for a bit and simmer.
Well, I get the whole canvas. Like I'll prepare a panel. I work on these panels that I make, and I'll prepare something with a different collage, and I have this idea. And I've had idea panels sitting in the corner of my studio for over a year and a half, and I sit there and look at them, and I'm not, once I get started on a piece, I crank through it, but it's only because I've planned it out for a year or more. So it takes me a while to really get going, but
yeah, and it might be the nature of our medium too, because, as a glassblower, I don't have time to be pensive and kind of take things in. It's like there's fire involved and things are changing so quickly, and we're a fiery bunch, that's for sure.
It's true. Glass blowers are a different breed, and it's funny to be next to a different glass blower. There's an energy about you guys. I've noticed. I've met a number over the years that all have a little bit of that immediacy. That it's interesting to me. I was talking to Sarah Bean just yesterday, I think, and we were laughing about the fact that you and I have found kind of a groove with the podcast, and I said, she said, well, Douglas he's got his briefcase full of Clorox wipes and you just spilt bourbon on your pants.
She pretty much summed that one up perfectly, I would say.
Pretty apt.
Yeah.
So, anyway, this week is a big week. I'm starting to look on Facebook and seeing different people getting ready. I just saw a couple of our good friends packed up and ready to hit the road for Greenville, South Carolina for Artist Fair.
So exciting.
Winter Park is coming up after that. So pretty exciting times.
Well, I've had Winter Park in my sights, and I know I talked about that immediate after my vaccine was like, yay, I'm going to Winter Park. And then like, oh, let me think about this. And yay, I'm going to Winter Park. And oh, what about this? And I literally had that push and pull for weeks, but the decision was made. We're going to go. If it turns into a vacation, it was going to be our first big outing in a year. We got a nice Airbnb. We were really committing and looking forward to this. But something in our family happened, health problems.
Oh, man.
I'm not going to go into details, but So there you go.
Yeah.
Rug pulled out from under us, and we're home.
The rug pulled out from under us is a nice theme around our house as well. And
the leash pulled out from under you.
Yeah, I can't blame
from
it.
Stepping on grabbing your dog's leash.
I can't blame the puppy still, but when I was a kid, we had to read this short story called All Summer in a Day by Ray Bradbury. Yeah. And it's kind of, I don't know why or what the lesson is, but it stuck with me for a really long time. But this little girl who comes from a sunny planet, and it goes to a rainy planet, and she's withering away and she's dying, and she just wants to see the sun, and it's all she wants to see. And these heinous kids in her class lock her in this little cupboard. They don't like her. They lock her in the cupboard. All of a sudden it gets sunny, and it only gets sunny on this planet like once a day, like every 20 years or every year or something like that. They locked her under the cupboard for the one sunny day, and they all come back in, and they've got sunburns on their cheeks, and they remember this kid that they locked under the stairs, and they open it up, and I mean, it kills her. It's crushing. So I feel a little bit like the little girl locked under the stairs with this idiotic leg of mine. So, but
or
whatever.
Charlie Brown chasing after the football that Lucy pulls away. It's like you were all gung-ho to make that 2,200-mile drive across the country.
Hell yes, I was ready. My wife was ready for me to get out of the house. Instead, she's waiting on me hand and foot.
Well,
now she's a day nurse, and she's the only breadwinner, and she's she's a saint is what she is. But man, I got to tell you, it was incredibly easy to deal with Winter Park. I got the phone number of Camille, and she could not have been kinder when I told her that not only did I blow out my Achilles, but I'm practically bedridden right now, or couch ridden, and I've got to keep my foot up for like 6 weeks. It's a nightmare. So my wife can't go either. So we both canceled, and she was incredibly kind and understanding and very artist friendly, and can't say enough about the good people at Winter Park. So
I second it. I mean, my email to her was hard to make, and I felt like, well, I basically shared on the podcast that I am in turmoil of, well, am I going to go? Am I not going to go? And then I have this family crisis happen. And I'm like, and she wrote back the kindest thing to me. And it just made me feel like those folks there, they're not just running an event,
right?
That they are in our corner. And I think it's great that they are launching. I know that they were literally the first show, one of the first shows that, was a casualty of this damn virus.
Right.
And they are making it go. So I wish everyone well. I wish everyone success.
I hope everyone sells out, honestly. I hope it's an amazing show. I hope people are hungry for the arts. I know that they are. But when you do sell out, if you could please shut the hell up about it. Don't tell me. I don't want to hear about it. Just count your money, take it to the bank, and don't tell Will.
Just say, it was so-so.
Yeah, tell me it was terrible. Oh, it rained. I was like, I looked at the weather. It didn't rain. So what's funny too about Winter Park? I can't remember. I can't remember at all. I was going to say something about it. I can't remember. But
it came and went that quick, did it?
You wouldn't believe.
Well, when I was getting ready for the show, for heading off to Winter Park, getting back in that old groove of, okay, get my work together, figure out the display. It literally felt like I've never done this.
Yeah.
I had this panic and anxiety. Like I used to be able to just look at a pile of crap and say, yep, it's all there. I know exactly what's there. And now I have no idea.
Yeah, look at the pile of crap and be like, there are no shims in that pile of crap. I need my shims. I need my 2x4s. You know what I do is I build it from the bottom up in my mind. I used to have a rug, but I don't carry a rug anymore. I'm pretty bare bones. But I used to have a rug, but I'd be like, okay, well, what is on the bottom? And like, okay, the bottom is my pro panel feet. Like, in order to tie the pro panel feet together, I need my...
Yeah, you've already lost me. I start doing that, and I can't go that slow with it. I go like a freaking like lightning bolt, and then I'm to the tent top, and I'm to the work, and I've forgotten something along the way.
I wanted to ask you, when you are getting ready for a show, do you have... and I want to call them products. It's all artwork, but do you have a certain amount of...
The categories.
Categories. Okay, much better word. Like, I have to have this small, here are my small things. And in order to do a decent mid-level to upper-level show, I have to have this amount of the small things, this amount of the medium, and then this amount of the large. Is that how you set it up?
Obviously, it's a whole new ballgame. That's the way I used to do it. I used to, in my mind, feel like this is what goes. And I literally was driving, it felt like a semi-truck to every show. I've got this 20-foot van, I've got a 10-foot trailer. And one thing I've put a lot of thought into lately is, can I just actually scale back? And can I like make this a little bit more streamlined?
Yeah.
Really, I mean, kind of like be smarter about it.
The reason I bring this up, we all have what we feel like we have to have at an arts festival. And in talking to Ty, what I really admire about him is that I don't think he gives a rip about any of that. It's like, here's I'm sure he has his big, knock 'em dead showpieces. I've seen this Last Supper piece that he did that just blew me away. But I don't think he's just like, okay, well, here's my stuff. You like me? You're going to stop and you're going to check it out. You don't like me? Just walk on by. He doesn't create for the show. He creates his own artwork. He's his own man. And it doesn't matter if it's political. A lot of us shy away from political stuff. He'll just go right at it. And if you like him, you like him, and you stop. And it's really inspiring to me to meet somebody and to talk to somebody and to have someone as a friend like I do him that just doesn't care what the public thinks. He's his own guy.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So I'm excited to talk to him today. And I already talked to him, so I already know what we said. And you're the man that edits it all, so you know what I said. Probably better than I did.
You're excited for everyone to hear it for the first time and to really get to know who he is and what he brings to the world. And what I enjoyed about this interview, Will, is, we're both fathers and we have raised children along with being a professional roadshow artist. And people parent differently. In this interview, he talks about his strength is with supervision, he is showing his children the world through this art fair world that we're in. And so they get to see the world, and it almost seems like they're very mature young kids. I mean, they're accomplished in their own creative pursuits, and it's really, I found it really interesting.
It is interesting. It's a different way to raise your family. There is no bigger consummate family man than Ty. He marches to his own drummer. He does what he wants, but he's a father first, and that's what really comes across in our conversation.
I'm excited for everyone to hear your interview, Will, so here it is.
As I said before, Douglas, today is Art by Ty Day on the podcast. Ty is an American Samoan artist creating work with inspiration fueled by music and the nostalgic memories of his turbulent teenage years. He might pull from the influence of Salvador Dali and surrealist artwork, but he's a true original, self-taught artist, badass with a ballpoint pen and a consummate family man. Check him out online at artbyty.com. That's artbytai.com. You also won't want to miss his own video podcast, DOD 45, where he sits down for 45 minutes and has discussions while he draws. That's the DOD, Discussions Over Drawing, with people that he admires in the world of music and art. Quentin Hughes and Sage Francis episodes are currently on his website and on YouTube. You don't want to miss that. Ty, how's it going?
Hanging in there.
I mean, that's what we do, right? I mean, it's sit around and wait.
It sucks. Like, I keep talking to people who've been doing some shows, and they've been having these amazing shows.
Right.
Well,
yeah. I mean, it's like the luck of the draw. It's like, well, I signed up for a few shows and they've all been canceled, but somehow I've talked to a few people who've all signed up for things that have gone, they've gone through and they're like, oh yeah, I'm crushing it. It's like, I wanted to reach out to Nicario too. It's like Nicario's award-winning circuit has not stopped. Like he's crushing it. Yeah, I feel, especially with this leg, just kind of stuck in the starting gates. I've been waiting all year for work to start, and I just canceled my first 2 shows.
You had surgery?
Yeah, I had surgery last Wednesday, and so I'm going to be hobbled for a bit. Hopefully they'll put me in a little bit of a walking boot, but we'll see what happens on Thursday.
Yeah, I'm in a back brace right now trying to sit up straight, but...
Oh my God, is this the nerve that you mentioned? What happened?
I've been overworking out, and then I moved a bunch of rocks from our pond for the last couple of days, and it just inflamed, and then kind of hit my sciatic, and it's getting better, but I can't really move around all that much. But I mean, it's happened to me before. It usually lasts like a week.
Okay, all right. So I mean, you I don't know. Your work ethic is part of your, part of your charm. There, you're always working in the back of your booth. You've always got your pen out.
I'll blow my brains out if I'm not able to work.
That's the way I felt. I felt like. I don't know. I feel like your work ethic's probably better than mine, but I've been sitting on the couch and that's, I have to elevate this leg and I'm like, I actually feel claustrophobic inside my own body. Like I try to keep myself busy, but just not being able to maneuver around and sitting for a while starts to hurt, but whatever. Yeah. Yeah. You started that podcast project. Tell me a little bit about that, though. You've started another one. It's more of a video thing.
I have been wanting to do it since the beginning of the pandemic. When the pandemic first hit, I tend to have panic when I start to feel irrelevant. I don't know exactly what it is, but I start thinking like, oh, if I'm not constantly in the face of my collectors or people who like my work, then they'll find somebody else to love. It's some sort of abandonment issue that I have.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so when the pandemic first hit, we were like, okay, what are we going to do? So I started doing these online drink and draw things. And also when I do live stream drawings, people were always just watching. And so I used to have music playing. And so one of the benefits my collectors who follow me online could get is I'm proud of my music selection. I have an eccentric taste in music. So I would be playing that music while I was doing these live stream drawing sessions and people would love it because they could just listen to my music and watch me draw. Well, then Facebook and YouTube started doing those copyright issues. So I couldn't play music while I was drawing anymore.
Bummer, yeah.
There was a drop off between my live drawing streams because there was no music and it was just quiet. And it was just me kind of drawing. Yeah. Every once in a while, someone would come online or while they were watching me and chat with me. And I couldn't look up at their text while I was drawing, So I was like, it was interesting to have a conversation. So that's where this whole new podcast thing started. My goal is to bring in people who are famous. So like Sage Francis, who I just interviewed last week. To me, he's up there.
Oh, yeah. That was killer.
Yeah, I was stoked. So that airs on Thursday. I've got some other people that I can't say who they are just yet until they completely confirm. But the goal is to just interview musicians, artists, people who've inspired me over the years. And I think that's an added bonus to the people who enjoy my artwork, for them to be able to hear from the people who've inspired me over my 20 plus year career as an artist, a connection to my artwork that they'll get. So
that's a huge bonus. I mean, I do music in my own booth and try to keep it low level, but I provide a soundtrack. You're listening to music and you're engaging, and it's like a lot of my pieces are about music, and you and I dig a lot of the same things. You turned me on to that Clarksdale spot, the shack up, and I was sitting there drawing out there, and I'm like, I look at some of your stuff, I'm like, oh shit, he drew that same truck.
Oh yeah. When were you there last?
I was there last, well, I guess it would have had to have been 2019, in between a couple of shows.
Was the blue truck still in the courtyard area?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know they moved some, or they got rid of some things, but yeah, I love that place, man.
Yeah, it was really nice. I was nerding out on the blues, and I was going down to different spots, and I was like, I want to go see the different grave sites of Robert Johnson, the disputed grave sites. So I was going around, we were traveling, and we ended up on an unintentional Emmett Till tour just because of all the different things. I was like, oh, let me see where, is nerdy 50-year-old white guy. I'm like, I want to see where Sonny Boy Williamson was born. And it's like, oh shit, this is where Emmett Till was hung. And this is the gas station where they picked him up. And it just it was a nice wake-up call for me just as a tourist too, to add a little bit of depth to the tour that we were on. And by the time we went back to the Shack Up and we'd been our heads were kind of spinning. We'd seen quite a bit and processed a lot, but they were doing a musician's benefit for some kids, and we scored some tickets to that, and we're able to give back a little bit. It was a charity art auction for these kids and the music, and I don't know, the whole day it was kind of magical, and magic kind of happens down there. That's how I feel anyway. It's
absolutely.
Yeah, saw that the truck and the whole thing, and it giving back helped me feel a little bit less just like a voyeur,
Sure. Yeah. We had the magic experience our first time there too. I mean, when we were just traveling through and it was getting late, and when I get hungry, I can be quite a nightmare. But I'm also for my family, for my wife. But right. I'm also a nightmare when we show up at a place that I don't feel comfortable immediately. Comfortable as far as like I'm traveling with my two kids and my wife, so I'm on high levels of alertness. I don't freak out on things, but I always have to operate highly because I want to protect them. And but we had pulled up right in front of what's Morgan Freeman's place called again?
Ground Zero.
Ground Zero. And I was like, well, this place looks quite shady.
Right.
There's couches out front and everything's signed. And I was like, oh, I don't know, you guys, but it was getting late. My wife went in. She's like, oh, I know how bad you get when you get hungry. I'm just going to go in there and see if they have food. Right. So she went inside and came back out and said, it's really cool in there. Let's go in. And we went in. It was in the middle of the daytime. We took the kids in there and we were eating, and then people started filing in. And that was about 2 p.m. And it started getting to about 6 p.m. And we were like, oh, we should probably go because it's going to turn into this kind of crazy,
bar.
Party, bar thing. And as we were getting up to leave, this big guy in overalls, he comes up and he says, hey, you guys shouldn't leave. why don't you stick around and hear us play? And that was the All Night Long Blues Band. And we left at like 3 a.m. My kids, my daughter got called up on stage and she was dancing and she was like 7 years old at the time, even that. It was a great night. And then what is his name? The guy from the All Night Long Blues Band, he played the harp. He ended up having a heart attack about 5 years ago, maybe more. And I did a drawing of him for the band and for the bar and took it down there. But
oh man,
that whole experience was amazing. And we've gone back maybe 2 times a year since then. We haven't been there for about 3 years now, but
the guy that runs Cathead Records and bookstore usually has his finger on the pulse of stuff. So, I mean, when I'm there, and you probably run into the same thing, it's like it's between shows. That's when we travel. So, it's a Thursday, Friday, maybe a Thursday town, but it's a Friday, Saturday town. I kind of like it because you're catching the remnants and you're actually catching some of the real actual town. It's not just the touristy kind of stuff. But I mean, that town is still very real. But that guy in Cathead will he has his finger on the pulse. He'll tell you, hey, check this out. This is happening. This guy might be here. This guy might show up here. Just go down and check this out if you can. So it's always been cool. You mentioned your kids, and the whole idea of this particular podcast that Douglas and I have been doing is like we started talking about kids and raising our kids. And so I'm like, well, that is a really cool topic. You think about like Kemper and Bruno who grew up on the road. Douglas interviewed Mickey and Ryko and talking about Ryko growing up, and now she's at the top of her game and showing at all these shows. And I was thinking about you guys, like to me, you're the consummate family man. Like you always have your whole family on the road. You've got both kids. I mean, I remember your kids being super little, playing with Legos behind the booth. I mean, it's tricky. I mean, you talk about going to Clarksdale and being out till 3. It's like your guys are getting a different experience, but it's super wholesome too. You know, it's all about family.
One of the things that I've discovered as my daughter is now 15 and she's very herself and strong and has really strong opinions about things. I've discovered that all of that travel, road life for them has been just a huge benefit. The things that they got to see when they were just kids and how people exist and how people interact with each other in the real world is something you can't get from, being in a classroom with other students and a leader at the top, the teacher or the principal. It's amazing. I mean, now I'm the child in the relationship. It's like it's so bizarre to me. Like I'm the foolish one now. And she treats me like I'm a little kid now, and rightfully so, because she is at the age that she's been growing up, living on the road. That stuff is concreted into her forever. I only started traveling when I was in my 20s. So, I mean, I used to be a total introvert homebody. I never left my house. I was synonymously known as the guy who never leaves the house ever.
Yeah.
And then when the economy crashed for the first time, I had to get out and find new ways to make my artwork available.
I was curious as to, we all get into this business in such a weird way. That's why I changed my body of work. I used to do a completely different body of work, and I changed when the economy crashed. How did you get out on the road? How did you start doing shows?
At the time, I was doing completely different work. I was doing stencil pop art stuff. I sold one on eBay. I had just lost a TV job. I was editing a TV show for a fight TV show. And the show got canceled. So I was about to go tie rebar with a friend of mine, which is like one of the worst jobs ever.
Oh, my God.
And that was looking down the barrel of a rebar tie-in job. And I had just done a mural with some people. It was my first time ever doing stencils, like 2 weeks prior to this. And actually, the mural I did, it was the lady, Jan Harworth. She was one of the original designers of the Sgt. Pepper's album cover.
Yeah.
She lives here in Salt Lake or in Park City. Anyway, I did a stencil piece for their mural. And I was like, I'm just going to make a stencil thing for my wife because her birthday was coming up. And it was a painting of Erykah Badu, Miles Davis, and Billie Holiday. And before I gave it to her, I had been messing around on eBay. And so I listed it on eBay. And it sold in like 15 minutes. And I felt bad because that was supposed to be the gift for my wife, but I was just testing it out, And then so I painted another one because it's stencils, and that sold. And then that was the Sunday night before the Monday I was supposed to go to work. And I was like, you know what? I called my friend who owned the rebar company. I said, give me a week to try this out. And from that day forward, we were painting stencils. And just selling all across the world on eBay, because this was right when pop art was becoming real huge in the States. eBay was where people went to go buy stuff. It got to a point where I had to ask my wife to quit her job, and we were just selling. Like, neither one of us came for money, and we were making just crazy amounts of money. It was crazy. Like, we would take, when she was pregnant, after she had the baby, we were taking turns in the studio where I would come out in the morning and I would work until 5 p.m. and then she would work all night long, just mass producing paintings. And that was where how I ended up with so many huge collectors all across the world, is because at that time, a lot of them stayed with me, but it was totally different work. That first year that I was selling those paintings, we were making like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Amazing.
It was so stupid.
Right.
And we were young and not even, and just a family. And like, when you're making money like that, when you're making like $13,000, $20,000 a week,
right?
Like, we went and bought shit on credit, because I was like, we went and bought a brand new truck, and I was like, oh.
Well, you never think it's going to stop, right?
Yeah, I was like, we can cover $1,000 a month, no problem.
Right.
And the economy crashed, and we were left with all this debt. We didn't know we weren't good at saving any of that. So that money just started going away and away. No one was buying on eBay anymore, and it just completely went away. And I was like, now what? And I had a friend that she had been doing the Utah Arts Festival for a couple of years, and she told me what she made. And I was like, all right, well, I'll apply to the Utah Arts Festival and we'll try it. And we got in the first time we applied with the stencil artwork stuff, and I sold out at the show. And I was like, oh, here it is. This is every show is going to be just like this. So I booked a show in Tacoma, Washington. I booked all these shows. Well, my next show after that Utah Arts Festival was in Tacoma, Washington. I went and bought a new truck bed, like a cover for my truck so we could take our work over there. I made $250.
This business, man, it keeps you honest. It totally does. It has this way of keeping you honest. I mean, the first time I had a show with this body of work that I'm showing now, I went down to Coconut Grove and I crushed it. I sold out, and it kept the wheels on the wagon, but it's like, it just feeds that gambling addiction. Yeah. You know, that we all kind of have that excitement, that thrill of the sellout, that thrill of being able to go to the next town. And we've all taken one, you know, we've taken one at good shows. We've taken them and then, you know, you go to some rinky dink and you just knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
So,
well, when one thing as artists too, like we're sensitive about things. So you start, like if you have a great show with your new body of work, you know, initially when you're going out with new work, you have that worry like, oh man, am I going to miss the mark with this stuff? Like, is this not going to work out? And then it does. And if it does work out, that's great. But then the next show, maybe it doesn't. So yeah,
Well, that brings me to another point about you and your work. It's an interesting thing where I see like a lot of artists in this industry are so afraid to say anything. You know, it's like they do a lot. There's a lot of decorative work out there. There's a lot of really good decorative work out there, but they're not saying, we're like, well, I really wish I could get political. I wish I could, but nobody's going to buy that, which I think, you know, you walk into your booth and clearly that's obviously nonsense. You know, I mean, you say whatever you want. And that's, I've always admired. I mean, do you ever find yourself, maybe I shouldn't say this, or do you, I mean, because it seems to me like when I walk into your booth, you're just going for it.
Yeah, you know, well, thank you. And I've always had artistic talent, but I've never considered myself an artist and never even understood the world, and I still don't. And it's not something I ever even really want to understand. I have a verbal communication issues. I have adjective recall is one of I practice every single day to remember adjectives and to work on my communication skills. I've done that it's almost like I have a stutter. I jump ahead. Okay. Like you can hear it. I hate to ever point it out because if you ever go back and listen to anything that I do, I'll start saying something and I'll jump over somewhere else to where I think everybody's with me, but no one really is. Drives my wife nuts. I know that. But so my artwork has always just been the only way I can communicate. So, and I have never, ever been afraid to say things that I like or say things that I don't like. I've never had any fear of that. So my artwork is just an extension of that, I think. So, yeah, sometimes it gets me into conversations that I don't care for with people.
I was wondering. I mean, is that it's got to? I mean, the way we show in a lot of the different places that I've seen you in Des Moines, I've seen you in Fort Worth, and I'm like, Fort Worth, it can be a bit of an edgy town, and I could see, you were there the first year that you were there. and I'd never seen you there. I was like, oh yeah, they're going to eat you alive. Like it's just your market. But I could also see cowboy hat guy walks in and gives you a hard time or says, well, what's this about? And I don't know. How do those conversations go?
You know what I find most people with my artwork is if it's not your thing, it's almost like you don't even see it. So the people who ever come in and have some sort of issue or want to start up some sort of drama, they're people that are always looking for it. And so they'll come in and most of the issues I ever have are usually like religious based. People want to come in and try to ask me if I found God and stuff like that. They always like T-bone, like they'll do like a trick. Well, they'll be like, oh, wow, you're so incredible. how do you do this? Or do you think that it's some other spirit from above? You know, it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, I just enjoy it. And then all of a sudden, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? I'm like, what? And I have no problem with people with religion, but then they start trying to go into things about, well, this is what you're drawing here is the sign of the devil and all that stuff. And I don't even think about that at all. I don't run into too many issues. I'm heavily tattooed, which back in the day used to be kind of scary for people to approach me. But I have learned over the years, people are afraid to approach me, but I'm a teddy bear, man. I'm emotional and sensitive, and I just have a look that sometimes comes off as like I'm a hard ass, but I'm really not. The good thing about that is it usually keeps those people at bay, where I don't have to usually get into too much confrontation. I don't like confrontation.
Yeah. No, I mean, it can be a filter. You know, I can see your work as a filter, and it filters out the, you know, but it's always interesting when you get weird. I've never had a problem with it. I don't get as out there as maybe as I'd like to sometimes, but like I'll get there and I'm like, well, that piece is gone. I sold that immediately. I mean, you really can say whatever the hell you want. And it's like, I kind of see that with you guys too. It's like, well, here's this edgy, the guy, he's scary and he's got this, you know, the monkey and the gas mask and he's walking through blood and guts and it's, you know, what's he trying to say? And it's like, well, you know, look at what he's doing. You know, his kids are on the road with him. You guys are out there together. And I just really wanted to talk to you. I mean, I love the fact that your daughter, she just, you let you brag on her for a minute. I listened to that album that she put out recently. And how cool is that? I mean, how long was she working on that? And it's all her.
Yeah. When she was 13 years old, she had this idea where she was going to write. She knew it when she was 13. She said, I'm going to write this music, all these songs when I'm 13. When I'm 14, I'm going to record that music. And when I'm 15, I'm going to release the album. And the album has 13 songs on it, and the album's called 13. And that's like thought. At 13 years old, I wasn't thinking, you know, I don't even know what I was thinking. Probably playing video games or something. But and I do attribute that to her living on the road and experiencing being around people who are celebrated for expressing themselves artistically. It's fantastic. Like the first time I heard it, I was just crying. Like I was just bawling my eyes out because I was so proud of her. I would hear her up in her room playing and recording it, but we knew we were never allowed to listen to it. We were never allowed to comment on it. So the very first time I heard it is when the album was released on Spotify. That was the very first time I heard any of it. And so I was blown away. I just could not believe it. It's really good. It's, you know, it's crazy.
It is.
She got contacts from people that wanted like more access to her. They're like, hey, these people were in the music industry. They were like, hey, can we get access to her Instagram page? Because it's private, because she's, we don't want, that going on. And they asked us, can you ask her to let us get in on there? And we're like, no, probably not. And then some other people from some music industry were asking if she wanted to have a meeting with them, like a Zoom meeting, and have a discussion about things. And she wasn't into it at all. She was like, no, I don't want to do this, telling that to us.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, in my mind, I'm like, I would have killed for an opportunity like that. But then I was so proud of her because, I know what her feeling is. Like once people start putting their hands on your music and your artwork and the things that you did as just an expression and something on yourself, they start changing you. And then you feel a pressure to, oh, maybe I can't write music like this or do music like that. So I think that's her angle of why she didn't want to. And I just want her to be a kid right now. I mean, she's got talent. And if she wants to create music later, that's fine. But this was just a project for her. Like she wasn't like trying to make a career out of being a musician, which is also like just blows me away too.
That blows me away too. The clarity that it takes for a 15-year-old to do that, you know?
Her and my son are great musicians. And that was something we always raised them with, is even if you don't go anywhere with your music, one of the coolest damn things in the world is if you're sitting around a campfire and you can break out a guitar and just start playing something. I wish I could do. I can play the guitar a tiny bit, but not enough to just break it out and start playing around a campfire. And that'll always be a benefit to you as you get older. Even if you're a doctor or a lawyer or anything, if you can just bust out an instrument and start playing around the campfire, like it's awesome.
It is. My kids, I'm worried about because I feel like they're kind of at this stage, this preteen stage where they're rebelling a little bit and they're like, everything I do is pretty dorky and uncool. But I've got this vast music collection and I'm like, you can't think everything from Johnny Cash to Bad Brains is uncool just because I like it.
I know.
It's not, and I'm like, how do I get this stuff into their heads without it just being dad rock?
One of our tricks had always been, we just never comment on we never shared anything with them, never told anything to them. I would have, we'd always have music playing all the time. But one thing we know about, I think it's the same with adults. People want to discover their own music. As much as I love sharing my music, my music choices and what I like with people, I know I don't want to be told what's good or be told. I want to just discover it on my own. So we would kind of just leave a little bit of some Easter eggs around with music and let them kind of hear it. And then go into the blues, like, seeing live music was always a bonus too. But once as your parent and you say like, you should check out this band, forget about it.
Forget it. And it could be the best thing. And it's like, God, I screwed it up again, Well,
what me and my wife have discovered is the kids are so smart and these days that their music choices and the things that they listen to have changed my whole outlook on what I'm listening to now. Like I listen to really stuff I would have just, constantly made fun of when I was a little bit younger. But now I'm just like, wow, that's really good music. And I mean, TikTok, people are making music everywhere, which is fantastic. So there's a lot of voices out there and only the good voices break through the noise. So
it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. They've got their own thing and they're looking things up and I'm like, well, here's your Apple Music family plan and I can do this, but it's hard.
Well, they listen to crap too. My daughter listens to this band girl who's this song, and every time me and my wife hear it, I'm just like, it makes me just like, I cannot take any more of this garbage. But, oh well.
Yep, that's the way it was. Yeah, somehow hip hop is dad rock. Like, how did I do that? Like, how did I make that uncool? I'm like, well, you'll get out there and you'll have friends and they'll tell you and be like, what do you mean? We're like, I don't need to be cool to my kids, but I'm like, I do know a couple things.
So people like us, music is important. It's just as important as learning how to read and write. At least that's how I feel. Because some people can't read or write or even speak themselves. And if you can use music as a way to speak your truth, then that's better than anything.
Yeah, it really is.
You want to share good music with your kids because it's that important to you.
Yeah. Hey, tell me a little bit about, how did you get to Hannibal? Like, I was interested in, you started out in Park City, you started doing shows, you did the Weird Chief, which is your Instagram with the stencil, which you're still out there. How'd you end up in Hannibal and with that crew?
When we started doing shows a little more regularly, I would see Michael Cole. I'd see him around. I didn't know who he was, and I never even really saw him. I just saw his work. I think the first time I saw it was at Uptown Art Fair in Minneapolis. And I saw it and I was like, oh man, that's a real artist. And I started feeling like a phony. Like I was like, oh man, that's what real artwork looks like and real.
Yeah.
And I was inspired by it. Cut to like a year later, we were doing the show in Houston at the park.
Memorial Park, Bayou City.
Yeah, the Bayou City show. And I was setting up and he was setting up right next to me. And I was like,
nice.
Oh, that's that dude. Yeah. Awesome. And
I mean, that's how half of my friends are, you really get to know somebody that way.
Well, and I don't ever venture outside my booth because I'm with my family all the time. So after shows, I don't go to the bars or I don't really go out because we go to the hotel, have dinner, get the kids fed. But so anytime, any friends I have that are road friends are people who I've had a booth next to. But yeah, so I wasn't going to go and talk to him because I just don't do that. Not because I'm an asshole. I don't.
Sure. That's just who you are.
Yeah. So he came into my booth and he was like, hey, would you ever want to trade artwork? I'm like, are you kidding me? And we traded, and then we had a great weekend. Got to know him a little bit better, and then a couple of months later, I was doing the show in the 57th Street in Chicago, and at the time we were living in Salt Lake City, so most of my collectors are in the Midwest and down south. It's a hell of a drive. That driving back and forth, like there were times where we were almost dying on the road, from trying to get from one place to the next, trying to pull a 28-hour nonstop switching places. So it got a little dangerous. So we always hated that. When we were doing the show on 57th Street, Michael Cole came over to the booth. He said, hey, have you ever been to Hannibal? I was like, no. And he's like, well, it's only a few hours from here, and I have a friend that's selling a house there. You should come check it out. Well, then we were like, we had a show in between, we had 57th Street on one weekend and the next weekend was going to be Wells Street. So we had a week in between.
Wait, was that Matthew Nafsker's house?
So that was Matthew Nafsker's house.
No way. Oh, that's right. I'm putting it all together now. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so we drove to Hannibal after 57th Street was over. We drove to Hannibal and he told me how much Matthew was selling it for. And it was it's dirt cheap, but maybe more than I was even planning on spending. So we started looking at homes in Hannibal and we saw one that was $12,000. So we were like, okay, well, while we go over there, let's start looking at some houses. So we went to we pulled into Hannibal. We pulled up to the house that was $12,000. And I got out and I was like, wow, that thing's going to need a ton of work. I'll check it out. And I started walking over and this guy was mowing his lawn at the house right next door. And he didn't have a shirt on. And he had this tattoo across his chest that said white power.
Oh, man.
I was like, well, we ain't buying that house.
No.
And we got into the van and drove up the street to Matthew Nafker's house and pulled up in front and I saw the house and I was like, are you kidding me? This is amazing. We got a key from Michael Cole. We went in and looked around and he had already started doing some work on it. And there was a bathroom that was that worked in there. So I knew if we decided to buy it, at least we had a place that we could shower and bathe while I worked on the house because it needed a ton of work. But I called Matthew. I didn't know who Matthew was. And I called him and I just had a couple of good shows in Chicago. And I said, listen, and the Utah Arts Festival is coming up. That's the show I always kill. And so I said, hey, would you ever be interested in selling this to me for whatever your price is, but let me pay you half first. And then I'll know I'll have a great show at this next one and I'll pay you the rest. And he's like, yeah, awesome. I'd love for it to end in an artist's hand. And I was like, okay, cool. And I couldn't believe we weren't really looking for homes, but just the Hannibal being, right in the middle of the country, you can get anywhere in a day's drive. Like that made a huge difference on us being able to do some shows. And I one time, long time ago, I saw before I was even an artist, doing shows at the Utah Arts Festival. I once saw this guy's artwork that blew me away. This was before I was even trying to become, before I was an artist.
Right.
And it was Joachim Nil's artwork. Nice. Okay. So we go after we decide, okay, we're going to buy the house. Michael Cole says, hey, these guys are going to have a little potluck dinner. Would you guys want to join us to there? It's some other traveling artists. We're like, oh yeah, sure. We'll go check that out. And we're pulling up to the house. And I told my wife, I was like, wouldn't that be crazy if this was that guy's house? Like if this was who we were going to?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, and then we knock on the door and Joachim Nil and Janice are standing there like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me.
That's amazing.
We're not sophisticated people. We're just suburban kids.
Sure.
And my wife's like, we got to bring something. So we brought these Doritos in these plastic bags, this really shitty bottle of wine.
But they didn't care.
I know they didn't, but it's still. Then we started finding out they hate plastic and all this. We'll never forget that first time we showed up at their house with that. But then we became friends.
That's amazing because that's how I became aware of Hannibal and kind of the artist community that was going on because I met him, Joachim, when he was doing the large-scale Polaroids. I don't know if you ever saw that work, but
Yeah,
that's when I first met him, and he was going around, and I think at that time he was like, yeah, I don't care if I sell. I live in Hannibal. And he's still kind of like that way. He's like, well, my my work is expensive. I don't care if I sell it. I'll sell them eventually, but who really cares? I live in Hannibal, and I'll win the awards. And because what an incredible artist, top to bottom, with those Polaroids and his paintings too. I'm in love with all of it.
I had a really good year a few years ago, and I was able to buy one of his original.
Nice. Which one?
Yeah. It's an alligator. It's an alligator. It's called, I can't remember what it's called. It wasn't one of the, $13,000 pieces, but it was a good, it cost, he let me pay in chunks.
Yeah. That's nice.
It's hanging in our Hannibal house. So
good for you, man. There are certain artists that I always regret not getting. Like, he had a piece called The Lovers that was two people kind of sitting at a coffee table. It was two bears sitting at a coffee table that were kind of like staring ahead. And I loved that one. And then there was one that John Whipple had that I just, called Comic-Con, that I've always been kicking myself. And I was kicking myself about that one. And then I don't know why I'm going there, but I reached out to him. I was like, man, you don't have any, I just want to see a photo of that. And he had just replaced that because the person that had owned it originally had died. And I think somebody else picked it up, but it was gone again. I was just like another week. And I'm like, what the hell am I thinking? So that goes as a lesson to all of you out there, whoever's listening. Just if you fall in love with the piece, even if you're an artist, get it.
I've even told people that before, because my original paintings that we were selling on eBay, the original paintings were like $50, $50 to $100.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, forget it if you think you're getting an original from me for that price now. But right. I have to kick myself, because about 10 years ago, I knew Dolan was going to end up and that was work that just, Dolan Guyman, that was work that was going to go to people who were going to see that. It was going to end up places. And I wanted to get him to do a Buffalo piece for me. And I should have got it at the time. I probably would have been able to afford it, but I don't think that's happening now.
Oh, I know. Dolan to me is always just like, he's just out of reach. I'm like, well, I can afford this. I wonder how much. I'm like, well, that's a little too expensive. I'll save up. And then you go back and he's gotten a little more expensive and just out of your reach again. I mean, it's buying art. It's got to hurt a little, right? It's got to be a little out of reach.
Yeah, what I like, I never really get to chat with people in this industry. I mean, Michael Cole comes over to my house once a week, and we just have beers out on the front porch of my gallery.
Nice.
So, but that's nice. But we don't ever really chat. We always kind of do the normal one when you run into another artist. You got shows coming up. What are you doing? But other than that, we mostly just talk about friend stuff. So it's nice to shoot the shit about.
It is, man. I mean, it's important. Yeah, there's an artist in Richmond before I moved, and it was like she came up. I sold some pro panels or something to her, and it was like it had been 3 or 4 months, and pandemic was going, and I'm like, it was just nice to be able to talk kind of shop, but your real friends, you can just sit down and talk about nothing. You don't have to talk. Well, what shows are you doing? It's like, well, I don't want to talk about that. This
is on a different level too. I mean, so what is so is it's a podcast? And what is do you have a specific angle, or you?
So originally we had the idea, like Douglas Sigwarth, I met him through just the NAIA. He came on as a board member, and I came on as a board member too with Ben Fry. But Doug had the idea of doing this podcast. We used to have this nice newsletter, and I used to do radio. I did radio for about 15 years, and I love it. But that was just spinning records. And then I'd come on and I'd say some, my opinions on XYZ, but it was mostly music and getting the music out there. So he was like, well, you did radio, any interest? So the idea of this is kind of like an NAIA newsletter. They sponsor us, and we're doing it as kind of a drive, but really it's just to get out there, have the conversations, and kind of spread the word about art shows and talk to interesting people. And
well, pardon my ignorance, but what is the NAIA?
So the National Association of Independent Artists is kind of an advocacy thing. It's as close as artists maybe have to a union. It's kind of our seat at the table when art shows go into certain things. They have written the way to kind of hold directors' hands that are new, that are trying to start festivals, and be like, okay, well, here, do it this way, and you won't run into any trouble. And it's just kind of it also kind of helps to meet the artists and the show directors on a level playing field, and not make it think that the show directors are the enemy in any way. They're all working for the same thing. So it's just a nice advocacy.
I'm glad I asked, because I love something like that. I'm glad that there is something that operates on that level, because that's awesome.
So it keeps us from being, I think, just a bunch of different little voices in the dark. And if we all have a big opinion, then we can kind of get that out there. So they were pretty big in helping, like when Bayou City added that extra loop, getting some people's money back when they did this, and it's a pretty good powerful group.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was really happy with the way that Mount Dora had done their show. I liked the separation of the booths. I liked that, they were pretty much, asking people, you can't force anyone, but people were wearing masks. And so it's just nice to know that there's an organization, or hopefully there's people, because I don't know what to do. I still feel very much, I've been traveling and doing shows, not near as long as everyone else, but it's like my 18th year or something, and I'm still
that's a long time.
Such an outsider of travel, like show guys, and I do like 30 shows a year.
Right.
Well, you were talking about doing the radio. I'm a huge Howard Stern fan, so that especially his later years. I mean, I've been following him for years, but I like when he's having a discussion with people, he's really kind of getting into the meat of people rather than their normal interviews. So that's what I do on my podcast. Is I'm not interested in talking to them about stuff that people have already asked in other interviews and had a discussion about. All that would be is like regurgitating information people already know.
Right. Yeah. Everybody already knows how Abbey Road is recorded and all that stuff. And it's like he gets into Paul McCartney and really gets into the dirt. And it's like a friend too. So yeah, I'm a big fan as well. So I'm making it easy on myself. So I'm like, well, let me line up these people that I know already, or that I already have a somewhat of a relationship with. So it's making it easier. So is it tough having your kids out on the road with you? Is it not, I mean, to me, it doesn't even seem like it's an option. That's just what you're doing.
We got lucky that my wife was such a good mother, because she homeschools them too. She's just super patient. So I think it would be pretty irresponsible for me to say, it's no big deal.
Well, yeah. I mean, but it's just what you're doing.
We're together, and we chose to have our children. Like, we made the conscious. We were married for a long time before, and we were like, let's have kids. So my point is, it was something we chose to do. So having the kids on the road with us was awesome. My dad had to work a lot, and he was always gone, and he wasn't absent, but he was not there often. And that was something I didn't want to be the relationship with me and my children or my wife. And so it was like, there was no other option. I've done, in the 18 years that we have done shows, I've done 2 shows without my wife or kids with me. And I'm not good at that stuff. One of the shows, I barely even woke up for the show the next morning, because I went out the night before. And I think we partied until like 4 a.m. And that was for the Art in the Square. And that show starts real early that first Saturday.
Oh man, if you did it Friday, you're talking about the Madison one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've made that mistake myself. And you get there, because you got to be there farmers market hours.
Yeah.
And if you're not, you're screwed. That's awful.
Yeah, and you set up that Friday night. Yeah, it was. But I'm responsible when I'm without them too. So I also get a bonus out of having the kids around, because after a show, no matter what, I don't use them as the excuse, but I can just be like, nope, I'm sorry. Because people are always like, oh, we're going out here. I'm like, no, my kids are hungry, and we're going back to the hotel. And I always have this feeling of like, oh man, everyone's out having fun. And then the second I get to the hotel room or into the van, wherever we're sleeping,
Right.
I'm very grateful that I'm like, oh, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. I'll be refreshed. I'll have a good day. So I'm always thankful for that.
You're not going to be running down the street with like, I don't know. I've gotten into some situations too. Like, oh, you don't want to go leapfrog trash cans in the middle of the night with us and end up on the beach with a bottle of tequila?
I do in my 20s. But I can't. I don't recover as well anymore.
No, hangovers can last a good 2 or 3 days, and I don't miss those hangover days. That's for damn sure.
But yeah, it's not too. It really isn't. It isn't tough if you're willing to do the work, and I credit most of that to my wife. She's very patient and good with the kids, and we don't do like the role thing where like I'm the dad and I do this and you're the mom, you do this. But we do that. We don't. We just kind of operate perfectly in our lanes. And my wife is very good at the taking care of the children's needs and going down that angle. Probably 99% of the time, she's taking care of the kids emotionally and physically and those things. I love my children to death, but I'm also I'm still a child myself. So I'm not great emotionally there for everybody.
Sure. Yeah, I get it.
But I love them to death and we have this great relationship. But I actually love it. I prefer having my kids on the road. And now they're getting to the age where this year we're still planning on going. My daughter gets her license in a year. But I don't know. We're not sure if they're going to keep traveling with us. What their feeling is there. As far as we know, they're still into it.
Do they have like a crew on the road, like other art show artist friends and stuff? Do they know?
They know some, and they have played with them. But my kids are the way we raised them, and it was the way I was raised as a kid, is like just being very responsible and very have a respect for things. And so a lot of times, I don't want to generalize, but a lot of the kids that are out on the road are like feral animals.
Yeah, right.
And they don't have specific rules that we would have because we're not comfortable. Our kids, being in a whole other city, like in Chicago or just somewhere far away from home. We've never been comfortable with them just kind of wandering off and going and doing their own thing, and ever.
Right.
So they didn't. They have made friends, but we kind of unfortunately have instilled this like worry about too much more than they probably need to worry about. And so they wouldn't go hang out with these people and go have fun with them because they'd be running around people's booths, these other kids, and my kids would be like, no way. You don't go around other people's booths. Yeah. You don't be loud if you're next to, I mean, that was always our big thing too. When we were having the kids, like we were constantly very concerned about disturbing the booth neighbors, and that's just the way me and my wife are. We want to make sure everyone around us is comfortable and happy. And so when we would pull up at a show and be setting up, and we bring out 2 car seats, like we knew what we looked like to the neighbors. Like they'd be like,
absolutely, man. Yeah.
And then one of the greatest things that would always happen. And we used to tell our kids, we'd give them $1 every time it happened. If we ever heard the comment after a show or towards the end of a show, the booth neighbor would be like, wow, your kids are so good. And every time we heard that, like my wife would give the kids money. We didn't pay them to be good, but that means something, like we want to raise responsible children. So
yeah, responsible humans, good humans. Yeah. I mean, that's what you're raising. And I feel like I'm probably responsible for a couple bucks out of your pocket because I definitely said that. We've been close by. I'm like, God damn, that's like, I didn't hear, like they just, like they're right there on the Lego table. They're just hanging, You've got your son is out there drawing or whatever. Are they artistic? I know your daughter is musical and your son is too, but do they take after pop?
Yeah, they constantly draw, and it's awesome. Nice. And my daughter's drawings, her art book is. My son draws a lot like me, that kind of crazy craziness,
Yeah.
stream of consciousness sort of stuff. My daughter draws at her age, the stuff that she's drawing blows I have all my artwork from when I was younger, not all, but a good portion of it. And her technique and the thing she's creating just blows my work out of the water when I was at that age. And it is amazing. She's got books, like just books full of drawings. And it's pretty awesome. But I just glance at them, I look at them, and I don't say anything. Because I don't want to say anything. I don't want them to be like, oh, great. Dad said this is good.
Well, you don't want to end up like me with your kids hating hip hop.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Man, this has been a really cool talk. It went a lot of different places that I wanted it to and some stuff that I didn't expect. So I appreciate you sitting down with me.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for thinking of me. I know what it's like doing a show, so I have no problem doing it.
Yeah, it's fun. Well, luckily I've got Douglas, that he's like this savant on editing and wanting to do all of the stuff that actually gets it out there. Or like, well, I could sit down and talk to my friends if you want and record it.
And editing really takes a lot of time.
It does.
If you care about what's going to be on there.
That's the point. Yeah, and we do,
Yeah.
Lay out your podcast. Give me the info. How do people listen and watch?
Yeah, the podcast is called DOD 45, which is Drawing Over Discussions, 45 minutes with a special guest. It's mostly a video podcast. I do have it where you can listen to the interview, but the idea behind it is to be able to watch me complete a drawing from start to finish while I'm engaged in a discussion with someone who I find interesting, and hopefully the people who are listening or watching will feel that they're just as interesting. So it's just mostly my guests doing the talking.
Okay, so just check it out on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube at Art by Tae. Taealii is the spelling of my name, but just youtube.com/Art by Tae, and then it's on all of the the podcast platforms. So I'm like on Spotify and Apple Music and all of those.
Yeah. So that first one's coming out on Monday. Is that what you said?
This Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. Yeah. The premiere is 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then it will be available on my Facebook, YouTube, or all of the streaming platforms. There is a pilot episode where we talk about music. But yeah, I've got some other pretty cool guys that I'm looking forward to. Mr. Dibbs, some people don't know who Mr. Dibbs is, but yeah, he's sitting in with me next. So
nice.
And some other people. So.
Cool, man. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to watch them. And I appreciate you sitting down with me too.
Yeah. Thank you, Will.
All right,
do you have you figured out what your sign off is?
Not really. We kind of, we've gone back and forth with it a little bit. I've kind of I've said enough stuff, and then Douglas calls it together and has a little sign off. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I've always wanted to do, you've said it all, like Howard Stern. That's what he does. And then the interview goes on for another 20 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's how I
figure out mine.
That's how I kind of with Mark Maron. I mean, he's kind of my hero as far as interviews go. And he kind of comes in and he's like, well, we good?
Yeah. He's witty and smart as balls, like with his communications. Like he says, so that helps.
So
what does he say? What, we good?
What, we good? You got anything else? I think we covered it. All right, we're out. And then he plays guitar.
Hey, that's the best. I got to figure out something like that.
Yeah.
Mine, I'll just do, thanks for joining me. Cheers.
That's good.
But it doesn't feel so insincere. Like I'm kind of and then it's off.
Yeah. Well, right. Be like, mine has been to just kind of, you can kind of see my hand entering the frame, and I as I'm reaching for the end button, and then it's awkward.
Okay, well, let's do it right here. Then so this will be the sign off. How would you sign off? You'd say yours. I'd say mine.
I would just say. I'd say, Ty, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate all the conversation, all the tips, and everything we learned from you this week.
Well, I appreciate you having me. Cheers.
Cheers, buddy. I'll see you on the road, hopefully.
All right, Will.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. Have a great weekend.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Oh, great job, Will. That was a really, really great conversation.
It doesn't get any easier than just sitting down with your friends and talking to them and handing it to you to make a podcast out of. So I appreciate you, sir.
I listen to these interviews quite a few times as I work on them, as, clean things up. And I just get so connected to listening to our guests, even if it's the interview that I just got done talking to them with. I hear things differently, things, that come out in people's stories. And it only inspires me more. I mean, we are in a community of such amazing people, and I find such inspiration, not just from what we do, but from who we all are.
We all work for ourselves. We have to have, there's a drive in being your own boss. There's also something that makes us unhireable almost, that makes us do our own thing. And that's what I love about talking to people like Ty and sitting down and hearing what makes them tick and what makes them drive, learning more about the artist kind of community that's happening in Hannibal. That's so cool. It makes me feel a little bit more connected. So I appreciate him sitting down, and I appreciate you cutting it up and making it sound good.
And the other thing that I find so awesome is we are all really working as hard as we can to be the best that we can. I mean, these shows are designed as competitions, competition to get in the festival to sell your work, competition to win awards at the event, competition to win over our collectors who want to take our work home and support us. So that drive, it's not for everyone.
No, it's not. And you see it as a competition, and I look at it like a poker game. But you have to be invited to the big table sometimes in order to make the money, and that's how I see it. But it's interesting to get a chance to look beyond the sunglasses and really get to know somebody. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that with this podcast. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So Douglas, it was a really interesting conversation there, but you're going to take the family theme next week and push it to another direction. Who do you have?
I'm going to do an interview with Mickey Cunningham and her daughter, Reiko Yucatil.
I love those guys. Yeah.
But we had a great conversation. We have a lot in common. Our kids are about roughly the same age. Maybe theirs were a little older, but they kind of grew up in that same era. And we're both Minecraft artists, and we kind of both understand and have in common that grind, that.
Well, it's a family grind, but it's also you guys speak the same language.
That's right.
You've done the same thing. You talk. I feel like artists in general, we speak a certain language so that when we get away, I call them humans or civilians, when we get away to people that aren't art show artists, and then we have to talk a different way. It's like you guys talk a couple of different languages that are the same. So I'm looking forward to hearing that conversation.
Absolutely. And thank you everyone for tuning in this week, and we'll see you next time. And be sure to check out our Facebook page and Instagram page. You can find us at the Independent Artist Podcast. Check us out, like us, and subscribe, and join the conversation.
Good to see you, Douglas. We'll see y'all next week.
Bye, Will.
This podcast has been brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigworthglass.com.
And remember to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.